As the temperatures begin to drop and the days grow shorter, the trees transform into beautiful shades of yellow, orange, and red. The leaves fall to the ground and cover it in a blanket like fabric. It's so pretty that you can't help but take your dog for a walk in the crunchy leaves. You two enjoy every moment until suddenly, a leaf lands right on your dog's face. You both jump in surprise, but then your dog begins to freak out. They bark, they growl, they try to shake it off, but they can't seem to get the leaf off their face. And no matter how hard they try, the leaf just keeps sticking back on. This goes on for a while, and it becomes clear that this leaf is going to be staying put. Eventually, your dog calms down and accepts their fate. They shake their head and walk slowly back to you. As you look into their eyes, you see that they're scared and confused. You try to comfort them, but they don't want anything to do with you. They run away from you and hide behind a tree. All you can do is watch as your dog tries to get over their fear of the leaf. This must go on for hours, because eventually the sun begins to set and you have to go home without your dog. When you get back the next day, you find that the leaf has disappeared. Your dog is still scared, but they're much better now and eventually come back to you. But what did that leaf do to your dog? Why was your dog so scared? What does it mean? Stay tuned till the end of this video and we'll tell you all about it. But first, we need to tell you the story of the Chow Chow and the falling leaf. One crisp autumn afternoon, a Chow Chow was taking a stroll through the park with his owner, when suddenly a bright orange leaf drifted from the tree above them. It was spinning slowly in the wind, and the dog couldn't help but stare at it as it floated past his nose. The leaf landed softly on the ground in front of him, and he took a few steps forward to investigate. He sniffed it cautiously, then gave it a little nudge with his nose. The leaf fluttered again, and this time it landed right on top of his head. The Chow Chow jumped in surprise and snapped at it with his teeth, but he missed. He didn't want to scare the leaf away, but he also didn't know what else to do. So he tried again, this time leaping high in the air to try and snatch it out of midair. And this time he was successful. He landed on his feet with a soft thud, and the leaf was securely in his mouth. He wagged his tail proudly and barked once to celebrate his victory. Meanwhile, a sleek black cat was lounging beneath the tree where the leaf had fallen from. She had been watching the whole scene with amusement and couldn't help but flick her tail in a slow, lazy rhythm as she watched the dog below her dance around like a fool. When the leaf had landed on the ground, she yawned and stretched before padding over to it. She batted it away with a lazy swipe of her paw, then curled up beside it and closed her eyes. The dog, oblivious to the cat's presence, continued to prance around with his prize held firmly in his mouth. He was too proud to share his treasure with anyone, and so he kept it hidden behind him as he walked away. The dog trotted along, his tail held high and his head held even higher. He didn't want anyone to see his prize, and so he walked in a zigzag path, making sure that his prize was always hidden behind him. But the leaf was light and flimsy, and it began to slip out of his grasp. The dog struggled to keep it secure, but it was no use. The leaf fluttered out of his mouth and landed on the ground with a soft thud. The dog whimpered and dropped his head. He had lost his prize. He wanted to curl up and die. Suddenly, he heard a soft chuckle. He lifted his head slowly and saw the black cat watching him with amusement in her eyes. The dog growled softly, but the cat just purred and padded away. The dog sighed and slumped to the ground. He had failed. He would never win the ultimate prize. As the sun began to set, the dog walked slowly back to where he had seen his owner. He was ashamed and embarrassed, and he didn't want to face her. But as she came closer, he could see the worry in her eyes. She had been looking for him, and she was worried that something had happened to him. The dog whimpered and dropped his head as he approached her. His owner knelt down and stroked his head. She couldn't understand why he was so upset, but she knew that he needed her comfort. She wrapped her arms around his neck and hugged him tightly. The dog whimpered again, but this time it was a happy sound. He had found his prize. He had won. To the Chow Chow, the leaf wasn't just a leaf. It was a symbol of victory, a reminder that he had triumphed over adversity. Every time he looked at the leaf, he would remember the day he had faced his fears and won. For him, it wasn't just a leaf. It was victory. When you finally got your dog's harness off, you let out a sigh of relief. It had been a long and difficult battle, but you had finally won. The leaf had been stuck on their face for hours, and you were exhausted from trying to get it off. You looked down at your dog and saw that they were trembling. You tried to comfort them, but they just shook their head and ran away. You felt terrible. You had never seen your dog so scared. You didn't know what to do. You tried to call them back, but they just kept running. You followed them, but they were too quick for you. You finally found them hiding behind a tree, and you called out to them, but they just whimpered and shook their head. You felt helpless. You didn't know what to do. You stayed there for a while, calling out to your dog, but they never came back. You had to go home without them. You got home and immediately went to check on your dog. You had never been gone for more than a few hours without them before, and you were worried about them. You called out for them, but they didn't answer. You went to their favorite spots, but they weren't there. You checked under the bed, but they weren't there either. You were starting to get really worried when you heard a noise in the backyard. You ran to the back door and opened it quickly. There was your dog, sitting on the porch, in the same spot where you had left them. You ran outside and called out to them, and they finally came to you. You hugged them tightly and never wanted to let go. You couldn't believe how scared you had been. You had never seen your dog so afraid. You promised yourself that you would never let anything happen to them. The next morning, you got up early and went to the backyard to check for the leaf. You couldn't believe that it had been stuck on your dog's face for so long, and you were curious to see if it was still there. But when you got to the backyard, you couldn't find the leaf anywhere. You looked all over the yard, but it was nowhere to be seen. You were starting to think that maybe it had blown away in the night when you saw it on the porch, sitting in the exact same spot where you had found it the day before. You picked up the leaf and examined it closely. It was just a leaf, nothing more, nothing less. But to you, it meant everything. You had been so worried about your dog, and you couldn't believe that they had been able to get away from it. You were so grateful that they were safe. You threw the leaf away and went inside to make some breakfast. You couldn't wait to tell your friends about your adventure. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a comment. We love reading your comments. We're always trying to improve our stories, and your feedback helps us to do that. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you never miss one of our videos. Thank you for watching.